In Mississippi, a federal judge has struck down a new law that would make it difficult for individuals to assist others in voting. This decision comes after lawyers filed a lawsuit against it. It was filed in June on behalf of the disability rights in Mississippi, saying that this hurts them in a significant way. Joining us right now is Joshua Tom. He is the legal director for the ACLU in Mississippi. Joins me from Jackson. Joshua, glad to have you here. Walk us through this, because we've seen Republicans do this all across the country, where they want to make it difficult to assist people. They have, even like in Georgia, they passed a law that says that you couldn't literally even drop off somebody's absentee ballot. They have to do it themselves. These are the kind of actions Republicans are trying to take all across the country.
Yeah, so this law in Mississippi was designed to combat, so-called ballot harvesting. And, that's this idea that people are picking up absentee ballots, sometimes en masse, and doing any number of nefarious things with them, changing them, throwing them away, et cetera, et cetera. The problem with ballot harvesting, and particularly in Mississippi, is that there's zero evidence of that happening. The legislature, when it passed this law, presented no evidence of ballot harvesting. And at court, during the preliminary injunction hearing, the Attorney General of Mississippi's office presented no evidence of ballot harvesting. And, the judge highlighted that in his order, that while there's no evidence of any problems with collection and transmission of absentee ballots, the plaintiffs who we represented did present evidence that the inability to have someone assist them, many disabled voters are unable to, vote without assistance, that without, certain assistance, it'd either be very difficult to vote or they would be disenfranchised.
Now, does this apply only to the disabled, or is this applied to all citizens in Mississippi?
So our lawsuit was on behalf of disabled individuals in Mississippi, whether by reason of disability, blindness, or some other type of condition that would make them unable or make it even more difficult to vote. This injunction that we got from the federal district judge applies to them.
So, are you hopeful that other folks would do the exact same thing? Because again, we are seeing Republicans do this here in Texas, in Georgia, in Florida, in Mississippi, because they want to make it as difficult as possible for folks to vote. They do not want to expand access to the ballot.
Sure. Our lawsuit is based on the Voting Rights Act, a certain provision of the Voting Rights Act that says people with certain disabilities can have, quote, the voters, a person of their choice, help them vote. And what Mississippi did is it limited who could assist people turning in and collecting absentee ballots. And the state law was a clear conflict with the Federal Voting Rights Act. To the extent that other states' laws conflict with the Voting Rights Act in a similar way, to the extent that state laws are limiting people's federal voting rights, I certainly encourage them to bring similar lawsuits.
All right, then. So are you expecting the Republicans in that state to appeal this decision?
We're still waiting to hear. There's been no response from the Attorney General. In my experience, when it comes to the Attorney General of Mississippi defending state laws, they often do appeal. In this particular case, our lawsuit is quite a good one. We have Fifth Circuit precedent supporting our position. And just from a matter of the plain language of the two statutes, we should win. And the judge ruled in our favor, saying we did win based on the plain text. And so, to the extent that the Attorney General does appeal, they have an uphill battle.
All right, Joshua Tom with the ACLU. Great job. Keep fighting the good fight. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Roland.
All right, folks, I want to bring in my panel, Rebecca Carruthers. She is Vice President for Fair Election Center. She's out of D.C. Dr. Niambe Carter, Associate Professor, University of Maryland School of Public Policy, also out of D.C. Rebecca, I want to start with you. Again, we keep seeing this over and over and over again, how Republicans are doing whatever they can to shrink access to the ballot. And you know, this is the thing we keep trying to explain to people. We can't act as if our vote doesn't matter when they're doing all they can to stop folks from voting, even the disabled. Here in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, who is disabled, who is in a wheelchair, he actually vetoed a law making it easy for the disabled to vote in Texas.
Right. We are constantly seeing people are being targeted. We see that there are conservative legislatures across this country that are looking for ways to constrict and restrict those who are eligible to vote. And even in Georgia, we see that those who are eligible to vote, they register to vote, they do all the right things. But then we see that the state of Georgia announced that they're going to purge, I believe it's over 200,000 voters between now and 2024. So especially when we see how tight margins are in a lot of competitive races, we know purging 200,000 people is more than enough to make a difference in the outcome, whether it's for the U.S. Senate, whether it's for a governor's race. And of course, even less than 200,000 voters make a difference when it's a congressional race, much less your state house races as well. But I do want to point out this Mississippi case was filed because of federal law. That means that when we have good federal legislation, it is protecting and it is serving as a vanguard to make sure that voting rights are still respected in this country. So we really need to push for Congress to do something to further strengthen the Voting Rights Act, to do something to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need something done in Congress before 2024.
Niambe, this is a federal judge making this ruling. And for all those simple Simons out there who keep saying that that judges don't matter, these things are not important, hopefully they now understand this is what happens when you have the right type of federal judges making these decisions.
Absolutely. And I think that's always on the table. Part of the reason why Republicans have been so successful, the conservative movement has been so successful, is they were really strategic about thinking about these presidencies, not just about the person at the top of the ticket, but what does this mean for the appointments that they get to make? Whether we're talking about the Supreme Court, that's where we spend a lot of our attention. But there are also a lot of these lower federal court seats that get filled by these people. And these are, again, lifetime appointments. So these things absolutely do matter. So when we're talking about elections, it's a range of things that come under the purview of the executive that we often sort of dismiss or we give short shrift because we think of the person holding the title as having the big stick and all the power. But their power can actually last long after they are gone out of office. I mean, we've been talking about this on your show for months, Roland, which is like Donald Trump is gone, but his shadow is very long and very deep because of those Supreme Court picks, because of those federal court judges. So this is absolutely part and parcel of that conversation that has to happen every time we go back to that ballot box, which we're going to have to do again in a few short months, is pick these federal judges, even if by proxy.
And Rebecca, to these folks out here, I hear them talking about, oh, Roland, you keep talking about why vote Democrat. Let's remind people, Biden has named more than 100 judges. He has actually been naming judges who were defense attorneys, civil rights attorneys, individuals who have gone straight from fighting for laws right to the federal bench. And so people need to understand, if Biden and Harris is reelected, that's going to give them an opportunity to appoint another 100 to 150, maybe 200 judges, which mean, and look, it's only about 800 to 900 federal judges in the country.
You know, and these are lifetime appointments. So I would tell people, look, this is not a Democrat thing. This is not a Republican thing. Do your research. And when you're voting for candidates who have the ability to appoint judges, to vote on judges. So on the presidential, so this is those who are running for president. This also includes those running for U.S. Senate. It matters to understand what is their philosophy when it comes to the appointment of judges. These are lifelong judges. And we're seeing, even from the previous administration, a lot of the judges that Trump appointed were judges who were in their 30s, in their 40s. That means that ostensibly they might have another 50 years of making rulings that are going to impact your life. So we need people to lock in and pay attention, or even on the state level. This coming November, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is on the ballot. And so this is an opportunity for people who are voters in Pennsylvania to determine what type of judges do you want in Pennsylvania that is determining and reviewing state law. So all of these races that impact the judiciary, whether it's on the state level or on the federal level, it matters.